All right. All right, Sylvia and Lou, can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks for joining.
Jamie, did you just try and record the Zoom for today?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Did
Because
you
that's
see-
what Madison was asking because she has a meeting.
I'm glad you told me because I literally almost forgot. And I
Okay.
know, and anybody who's here, if you guys want a copy of it, shoot me an email, let us know. And that way, because there's going to be a lot of good information that we're going to be going over each week. And if we record it, then we can have it, for a recap on everybody. Okay, Carol's coming in here. And let's do. Okay, we got Lou. Hi, Lou.
Hi.
Welcome. Okay, let's see here. So anyways, I'll start by just doing a couple little introductions, and then we'll probably get started here in a few minutes. I'm Jamie, Girls Love to Fly. Those of you who are on our page or found us through that, thanks for joining. This is our first Zoom series. We're going to be doing them bi-weekly with the Girls Love to Fly. It's open for members only every other week. It's going to be taught by Alicia Richards. She's one of our chief girls. Thank you for that. She's our chief Girls Love to Fly pilot at Girls Love to Fly. And then Richard Conte, who is part of the Girls Love to Fly, and he is a local DPE. And the good thing about that is if you have any DPE questions, you can pick his brain. He might charge more for that, but you're more than welcome to pick his brain. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. We're going to leave today. We're going to talk about airspace. And then each week we're going to touch, different things. We're trying to really make this where it can be from basically beginner pilot to ATP and more, because no matter how many ratings you have, no matter how far you've gotten into aviation, there's always a lot to learn, and there's always a lot to refresh your memory on. So we're really trying to make it where it's not, if you've got knowledge already, it's not boring, like, oh, I already know that. It's just a refresher. And if you have anything to add at any time, you can raise your hand, or any questions throughout the whole class. It's an open book. And I'm going to let Richard introduce yourself, and then Alicia, and then it's we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, well, I think some of you know me, Richard Conti. Been flying for a long time. I'm a local pilot, obviously, an instructor and examiner. And I volunteered to do this to help out, and just to help anybody else that needs help. Anything else? Anybody going to introduce themselves, or
Yeah, we'll start with Alicia.
On the right,
and then we'll go down and have a few introductions.
Okay.
My name's Alicia. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Alicia. I am an instructor for Girls Love to Fly. I see one of my students on here. I have been in aviation since, 2018 as a flight attendant. And then 2019, I began as a zero-time private pilot. I trained at ATP and instructed at ATP, if you guys are familiar with the flight school. And then took a commercial job, had some multi experience, have a little bit of jet experience, and then found Jamie and found somewhat of a home. So I'm here to stay until, I get my hours.
And then we'll be so sad. Just kidding. We'll put in good recommendations. So yes, no, it's been
Thank
great.
you.
So, well, does anybody else want to pop in and introduce themselves? This is open to everyone. Maybe just say your name, where you're from at least, and then your flying experience, whether it's beginner or not.
Hi, everyone.
Lou, go ahead. We don't count now.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. So my name is Carol. I am here in Sacramento. I'm local, and I'm here to learn about airspace. You can never learn too much. There's always something new to learn. And I am a beginner. I'm a student pilot, and my goal is to hopefully soon get my certificate. Yes.
Thank you, Carol. All right, who's next?
My name is Dava. I'm actually from High Point, North Carolina, so way far away from you guys. I'm currently working on my commercial rating, and my end goal is to get all the way to airlines.
I love it.
And I'm actually a first generation pilot.
Say again, first generation pilot.
Yes.
Awesome. Congrats. Good. Okay, we got, let's see, who should we go to next? We're gonna pick on somebody.
I'll
Lou,
go.
Okay,
My name
go
is
ahead.
Shelby. I'm a student pilot, and I'm actually Alicia's student. I kind of got pointed out by her, but I'm working for my private pilot's license for in the future to possibly, what seemed like a dream, become an astronaut. So that's my goal.
That's
Biggest goal.
great. Anybody else?
Now we can go to Lou. Now-
Hi, sorry.
We're gonna skip Lou. All right, no, go ahead, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm actually in Northern Virginia,
Oh, cool.
and I have my private pilot certificate, and I'm working on my instrument rating right now.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it because the thing is, like, when you get your PPL, like, you learn about airspace and stuff, and people like you could go right into their instrument and then be like, you know what? I don't need to take that beginner class, you know, but it's so important to continue to remind, there's just so much to airspace. And one thing that Richard was saying, you know, during his check rides is so many people, no matter what, like rating they're getting, like even as they get higher up, they don't remember some of that stuff. Oh, I better let people into waiting room here. I've got people wanting to come in. Oh no, and I'm not letting them in. So I think it's great that you're here. So thank you, Emily. All right, we've got, let's see, we've got Lou, you're next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lou. I'm the old guy. I didn't start flying until I was 30. I'm now 56. I've got a multi-engine instructor rating, single engine instructor rating. Thinking about trying to jump into the airlines. I got an interview for SkyWest, and
Cool.
struggling to try and remember everything I forgot. So
That's why you're here. That's
That's-
why you're
here. So I've had my primary instructor was male, my commercial instructor was female, my tailwind wheel instructor was female, and I've done multiple check rides with females. So I enjoy learning, and all the girls keep going.
cool.
Well, I see more people are joining in, and not to cut them off, okay? But how about if we start on the airspace, and
Okay.
then that way, if anybody has any questions in between, feel free to.
Perfect.
I'm gonna start from the bottom, work my way up, give you references as when I make a statement, I'll tell you where to find the reference where it says what I'm saying, okay? And that way, if you don't believe me, or if you won't remember, you can at your leisure look up my explanation or whatever I've just said, whatever I've referred you to, if that makes any sense. Okay. Are you going to share your screen with us? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Jamie share her screen. She's going to bring up a VFR chart, and what I'm going to do is just talk about not quickly, but kind of give you a how can I say, rundown from the bottom all the way up. I'm going to give you what are the rules that apply to each airspace as I cover it. Okay, so if that makes any sense. All right, why don't you go ahead and share the screen? Look it up. Okay. Now, as she's looking the screen, looking up the sharing her screen, I'll start by saying that the AIMS has a bunch of good definitions. The AIMS information manual. Does everybody have ForeFlight by chance? Use ForeFlight? Okay. If you look on chapter 3 in ForeFlight, well, as a pilot examiner, one of the questions I ask CFIs just to see if they've read it is how many types of airspace, how many categories of airspace are there? And they'll tell me it's about 10 or 9 or 6, you know? And if you read the AIMS at the very beginning, there's only 2 types of airspaces. And they're called regulatory and non-regulatory. Okay. The 90% of the airspaces are regulatory. So now what I'll do is I'll start by just studying and going over the regulatory airspace, which is what you need to know as far as a CFI or as a private going to commercial, or learn more about the airspace. So you guys have the screens. You can see the section on your screens, correct? All right. So I'm going to try to, as you're looking at the screen, I'm going to try to describe which airport I'm talking about. Okay, and that way you can see if you can find it. Look at the screen on the left-hand side. I think Jamie's got the pointer. There's an airport called Los Banos. Okay, it's red. It's got a flag on top.
Wait, where? Hold on. Let me find it. Oh, here, right here. Okay.
Right there. That's Los Banos. It's red. It's a red airport. Okay, or magenta is what the FAA calls it, and it's got a flag. Anybody see what Los Banos looks like? All right. Los Banos, obviously, we know is an uncontrolled airport because it's red. Okay. Now, the next thing is what airspace is Los Banos in? Just as a general definition, the whole US is Class E airspace with some exceptions. Okay. Most places on this sectional, Class E airspace starts from 1,200 feet and work all the way up to 17,999, almost 18,000 feet, which is where Class A starts. So Class E is everywhere except, okay? If you look at the Los Banos, it's got the magenta circle around it, okay? And that magenta circle tells you that Class E airspace starts at 1,200 feet. I'm sorry, 700 feet AGL. So when you go outside the magenta circle, now you go to 1,200 feet AGL. So below 1,200 feet or 700 feet is all Class G airspace. Class G, when you are taking off in Class G, the question is, what's your weather requirement for taking off in Class G? Well, very simple. 1 mile clear clouds. That's for taking off. And as you're flying around at 700 feet, that's all you need is 1 mile clear clouds. If you take off from Los Banos and you stay, let's say, 1,000 feet AGL, when you're outside the magenta area, which is now where Class E starts at 1,200 feet, you're still in Class G. You still only need 1 mile clear clouds. As you start your climb and you get above 200 feet AGL, or in the magenta area, 700 feet AGL, you get into Class E airspace. Now, we probably all heard 3152, Cessna 152, 3152. What that means is, the one thing about airspace, when we talk weather, you have two requirements. You have cloud requirements, you have visibility requirements. So anytime you talk about an airspace, when an examiner asks you a question or a CFI asks you a question, they are looking for two answers: your cloud requirements, your visibility requirements. For example, going back to Class G, I take off 1 mile, that's my visibility requirement, clear clouds, that's my cloud requirements. I don't touch the clouds, I'm legal to take off. Once I get to 700 feet AGL or above the magenta, above Los Banos, or outside Los Banos, 1,200 feet AGL, I'm in Class E airspace. Go back to weather again. What's the weather requirements in Class E airspace? 3 miles, 152, 1,000 feet above the cloud, 500 feet below the clouds, and 152, 2,000 feet horizontal from the clouds. So when I'm in Class E airspace, I have to have my 3 miles and the 152 distance from the clouds. Making sense? Everybody nod, yes, no? Any questions so far? None. Okay. So all the way up to 10,000 feet, we've got, well, let me go back. Class E goes all the way to 17,999. But when we get to 10,000 feet, the cloud requirements change. It goes to 5111. Okay?
Which means?
I will see if anybody can jump on that. 5 means 5 mile visibility. Okay? 1,000 above, a mile across from the clouds. Why did that change? The reason is when you're below 10,000 feet, we have a speed limit restriction, 250 knots. When we go above 10,000 feet, there basically is no speed restriction. So therefore, the planes are going faster. And because they're going faster, they want you to have more room to avoid one of each other. So that's why they've increased the visibility and the cloud clearance requirements. And that goes all the way up to 17,999. All right. The next airspace is what we call a Class E echo surface area. That's deleted. If you look by Merced, she just, you can see her little hand on there. That has that little magenta dash circle around the airport. What that means is Class E doesn't start at 700 feet. It doesn't start at 1,200 feet. It starts on the surface. Okay, so when you are at that airport, you are in Class E airspace from the ground all the way to 17,999.
And that's called Class E surface area.
It's called a Class E surface area, and that's basically what shown with the magenta line. Now, I'm at that airport. What do I need for takeoff? Okay. It's the same as Class Delta, which I'm going to explain in a minute. I need 3-mile visibility. Now, and before I go to the next number, people get confused, and I see that quite a bit when I give somebody a practical test or check ride. I ask them, if you're at this airport, what do you need to take off? They'll give me 3-mile visibility, 1,000 above, 500 feet below, and 2,000 across. And that's incorrect. There is a difference between taking off and flying through.
Mm.
So at that particular airport, I need 3-mile visibility. And I'll explain the next one, 1,000-foot ceiling. We all know that when we have less than 1,000 feet or 3-mile visibility, the field becomes IFR. So that's where that 1,000-foot comes in. So for me to take off VFR at the Class E surface area, I need 3-mile visibility and 1,000-foot ceiling. I can take off, I can stay level 500 feet below the clouds and fly away from the airport. I'm totally legal. Now, if the weather is less than 3 miles or the ceiling is less than 1,000 feet, like 900 broken, I would need a special VFR to get out. Well, how do I get a special VFR? We're always hearing the tower gives that to us. What I would do is what the AFD says is the controlling agency. You look in the AFD, see which, how can I say, approach control is in charge of that agency, of that particular airport, and they can give you a special VFR. Now, if you're not instrument rated, it's a little difficult to find that number. So what you call flight service, 800 weather brief. You tell them where you are, and they'll coordinate for you between you and they will find the local agency. They'll be the go-between, and they'll tell you when you get a special VFR and when you're cleared for when you are released for takeoff. Okay, so the flight service can ultimately get you a special VFR to come out of a Class E surface area. If the weather by the AWOS is 3 miles or more, and the ceiling is more than 1,000 feet, don't need it. Just take off VFR and you're done. Right above the Class E surface area, we have a blue airport, Class Delta. Okay, a little different. The takeoff visibility, the takeoff requirements are the same as this Class E surface area. 3 miles visibility, 1,000-foot ceiling. Now, where did I come up with the 1,000-foot ceiling? If you look in the FARs, okay, part 91, and there's definitions of Class Delta airspace, and I don't have it in front of me. There's an FAR that tells you what you need to take off in the Class Delta airspace, and it tells you 3-mile visibility and 1,000-foot ceiling. So now let's go back to the Class Delta. I'm listening to the ATIS, visibility 10 miles, ceiling 900 broken. The field's IFR. Even though I've got 10-mile visibility, the cloud ceiling is less than 1,000 foot, so now the field's IFR. Well, I want to take off anyway. Okay, I got 10-mile visibility. The weather is beautiful. I just got a bunch of clouds or covering half the airport, and that's why they call it the field IFR. So now I can get a special VFR. Because it's blue, it has a control tower. Now, don't forget, not all control tower, not all airports have 24 hours. So we'll just make believe that it's an airport that the control tower is operating. You would ask for a special VFR from the control tower. Special VFR requirements are, it may sound familiar, 1 mile clear clouds, which is the same requirement as a Class Gulf airspace. How do I know the field is IFR at a Class Delta? Well, we listen to the ATIS, okay? But there's another way of knowing also. If the rotating beacon is on during the day, that means the field is IFR. That doesn't apply for a Class G airspace or Class E surface area because there's nobody to turn it on and turn it off. So you just have to listen to the AWAS, and the AWAS tells you what the weather is, and therefore you decide, okay, it's IFR, I can't go. Okay.
Can I jump in on that as well?
Go ahead.
So even if any part of that Class Delta, let's just say, you're at the airport and you look up and it's blue skies. If any part of that Class Delta is IFR, the rotating beacon will be on.
That's the control tower's job to turn it on. And
Yeah.
the way to determine it, like I use the example where sometimes in the wintertime, you have beautiful sky. I mean, you got 20, 30 mile visibility. Excuse me. Clouds always have a tendency to hang around the airports, right? To make our lives miserable. So if half the airport or more is 50% is 900 foot broken, the field is IFR, the tower will turn on the beacon so that even though the other half is crystal clear blue skies, they don't have a choice. More than 50% is IFR, therefore the field is IFR. Okay, and you have to have a broken ceiling, not a scattered ceiling, but a broken or overcast. Okay, so yes, the tower will turn the beacon on, and that tells you the field's IFR. Now, I remember I asked one. I was giving a student pilot. I was a private pilot check ride, and sometimes people have smart ass answers, but they're pretty good answers. I asked him. That was one of the questions. If the field, Class Delta airspace, if the beacon is on during the day, what does that mean? And he said 2 things. Now, I have never heard of 2. I only know of 1. He says, 1, the field's IFR. I said, well, okay, that's the correct answer. What's number 2? And he was kind of joking. He says, the tower forgot to turn it off, which I thought was a pretty good answer because I've seen it happen before, but never thought of it as an answer. So he was joking, obviously. The tower forgot to turn it off, which is why it's on. But the reason why it normally is on is the field is IFR. Any questions so far? Okay, am I going too fast?
No, I think for the private pilots that are on this is the reason for the lower is to cover the approaches coming into these airports. The ones that aren't instrument rated might not understand what the circles.
Okay, the purpose. Okay, let's go back to the Class E surface area. Okay, why do they want you the VFR still have to surface, not like a Class Gulf, which is 700 feet? The reason why is because people, almost every airport has an instrument approach. That means that what the FAA decided is they want to protect the pilot who's flying under IFR. They want to protect him up to a certain altitude so that he's assured not to run into people while he's doing his instrument approach. So with the Class E surface area, that means from the ground up to 17999, it's Class E. When you look at going back to Los Banos, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, 700 feet and above is Class Echo, and you can see where there's a little keyhole right on toes. It's not a perfect circle, okay? It's got a little keyhole, and that's usually where it's aligned with an instrument approach. So they're making it long so that way when an instrument pilot is doing an approach and he's breaking out of the clouds, at least if a VFR pilot takes off, he's got between 700 feet and the ground level to see him, okay? That way he can, as far as avoiding any other aircraft flying in VFR conditions, class Gulf, 1 mile clear clouds. That answer the question, Lou? Make sense? All right. Next airspace. Now, let me go back. Class Delta airspace, one more thing associated with it is a speed limit 200 knots. You can't go faster than 200 knots in the Class Delta airspace, okay? And 250 anywhere else under 10,000 feet. All right, bottom to the right is a Class Charlie airspace. And there are two numbers associated with the Class Charlie, okay? You can see you have 2 rings. The outer ring has 2 numbers, one on top of the other. Like on, if you go on the outside, it says 44 and 16. That's 4,400 feet and 1,600 feet. That means that 1,600 feet and below is not Class Charlie airspace. It's basically Class Echo airspace down to 1,200 feet, and below the 1,200 feet, you have Class Gulf. You have Class Gulf. We'll go back to the same old rules again. Between 16 and 44, that's Class Charlie, and we'll go over the requirements for in a second. When you go to the inner ring, you have 44 and SFC. SFC stands for surface. Surface to 4,400 feet is a Class Charlie airspace. Now, to fly, there's, again, you have the difference of taking off from a Class Charlie airspace and flying through a Class Charlie airspace, okay? Taking off from a Class Charlie is basically weather requirement, same as a Class Delta. Okay, 3 miles, 1,000 foot ceiling. Then your VFR, you're good to go, okay? Flying through the Class Charlie airspace, weather requirement, same thing, 3 mile visibility, 152. One extra requirement as far as the pilot is concerned. People say, do you need a clearance? A trick question is, do you need a clearance to go through a Class Charlie airspace? And the answer is no, no clearance required. What you have to do is what we call establish two-way radio communication. What that means is when you call approach and say you would like to go through the Class Charlie airspace, when they answer you back, acknowledge your call by repeating your N number. If they say, for example, Cessna 1234, stand by, that in itself is authorization to go through the Class Charlie airspace. Even though they said stand by, the reason why is they repeated your N number, and by repeating your N number, they have established two-way radio communication with you. If they were to say, Cessna 1234, stay out of Class Charlie airspace, now you don't have a choice. They told you you can't do it, okay? But just by acknowledging standby and your N number, that means you are legal to go through. There are some airports like if you get like what we normally fly out of McClellan, Class Charlie is right below, right above us, and we take off, and within a minute we're already going through it. So, and they may not have enough time to give us any vectors or whatever else. So the minute they acknowledge our N number, we punch right through it because they know where we're coming from. Any questions so far? No? Yes? Nobody's saying anything. I know I'm going kind of fast, okay? But, all right. So a recap would be, if you notice, a lot of numbers are the same. 1 mile clear clouds, 3 miles, 152. And it's almost like called a plug and play. Class Gulf airspace, Los Banos, we're talking about 1 mile clear clouds because we're in Class Gulf. The minute we go above 700 feet, we're in Class Echo, we change to 152. Class E surface area, 3 miles, 1,000 foot ceiling for takeoff. Once I take off, 3152 takes over. Class Delta, same as Class Echo surface area. 3 miles for takeoff, 1,000-foot ceiling. Okay. Once I'm off the ground, I'm flying through it. Still 3 miles, 152. 1,000 above, 500 feet below, 2,000 feet across the away from the clouds. Go back to Class Charlie. Weather requirements, again, same thing. 3 miles, 1,000-foot ceiling for takeoff. Once I'm above the ground, I've taken off, 3152. All right. The next airspace is going to be Class Bravo airspace. And if you can, Jim, if you can move the screen towards LA. North, a bit further up. Now, everybody knows what the class, that's, okay, that's LA. Okay, the Class Bravo airspace is, you can tell by the blue square, the blue lines around the airport. The inner circle will go from surface right there to usually 10,000 feet MSL. That means from the surface to 10,000 feet, you are under their control. You have to do what they tell you, okay? As you move out, just like in the Class Bravo, you may have two numbers. For example, 2,000 feet to 10,000. You got 100, which is 10,000, and a line below it, and then the lower number is 2,000. That means below 2,000, you're in Class Echo airspace, and 700 feet AGL, 1,200 feet AGL, you're gonna be in Class Echo, or below that 12 Class Golf. Between 10 and 2,000, you're in Class Bravo airspace, okay? So as you go further out, you can see those numbers may change as to what altitude you're gonna be in Class Bravo. Class Bravo is a little different. Remember, to be in there, now to fly through the Class Bravo, you have to have a clearance. An example I give when I give a practical test, okay? You call approach, and they tell you fly heading 200, maintain 6,500 feet, and squawk 1234. Okay, so they give you an altitude, they give you a squawk, and they give you a heading. And that heading is going to take you right into the Class Bravo airspace. Okay, well, does that constitute a clearance? And the answer is no. Okay, even though they give you a heading, an altitude, and a transponder code, you cannot go through the Class Bravo until you hear the words clear to enter Class Bravo airspace. Okay, until you hear those words, you cannot enter. So I've had a couple people say, if you're talking to ATC and they've got you on the radar, isn't there a rule that says you have to follow ATC's clearance or instructions? And the answer is yes. When you're under a radar, ATC gives you, once you, let's say you're doing fly following, and they say, okay, now fly this heading, you're supposed to comply with it. This is one of those times you are allowed to go against ATC, is to avoid causing another problem, going to Class Bravo without a clearance. So until you hear the words, clear to enter Class Bravo, not allowed to go through. Weather requirements, a little slightly different. Remember, you are under control in Class Bravo airspace. Therefore, ATC doesn't care about your cloud clearance requirements. So basically, all you need is 3-mile visibility clear of clouds. So because they've got you under control. So if your wingtip is close, they don't care whether you have 200 feet, 100 feet, 5 feet from the clouds, above or below, they don't care, because you are under their control, and all they want is a 3-mile visibility. That way you can see who's in front of you, who's on your side, because everybody, IFR or VFR, you're under ATC's controls. You have to do what they tell you to do. Now, can you take off under special VFR in the Class Bravo airspace? There's about 10 or 11 of them where it says no. And if it will even say so under sectional, it says no special VFR. That means that if you don't have an instrument rating, you're stuck on the ground until the field becomes VFR. If it's IFR, you will need an instrument rating to get out. Let's see. From, like I said before, 10,000 feet to 1799 is class Echo, and from 18,000 feet to 60,000 feet, that becomes class A. You're under class A, which requires an instrument rating and instrument clearance. You need an instrument flight plan and instrument clearance to be above 18,000 feet. And just like in class Bravo, you are under ATC's control. You can only do what they tell you to do. And if you happen to be rich enough, or marry a guy who's rich enough, and he gets an airplane that can fly above 60,000 feet, okay, then you go back to class Echo. Don't need the clearance. You do whatever you want to. Any questions so far? Somebody's got to have a question, because I've gone through almost all of it already.
Come on, somebody's got to have a question.
All right, let's talk about MOAs then, if that's the case.
Okay.
Can you find an MOA for me?
All right, let's see.
MOA, Military Operations Area.
Right here.
Do I need a clearance to fly through the MOA? The answer is no.
And let me show the people that might not know what an MOA is. It's where
Okay,
it's right here. This
as you can
little-
see, her little finger is pointing, is delineated by a solid line with the magenta solid line in dead center, and then little lines, squiggly lines all around that, all around the solid line. And if somewhere in there it will say MOA, it will say military op. For example, that one says Isabella MOA. They give all MOAs a name, so that way ATC, the military, knows what section of this over Earth they are, and no, how can I say, no clearance required. If you're IFR, definitely under IFR, if you're under instrument flight rule, they will, if the MOA is what we call hot, which means it's active, they will steer you around the MOA. Okay, they won't let you go through it. Okay, if you're, it's kind of funny because you're IFR, they make you go around the MOA, but if you're VFR, you can go right through the MOA. That's just the way it is. Sometimes I just don't go IFR because I want to go straight through versus having to go all the way around, add an extra 100 miles on my route. But the MOA is the military operations area. Basically, military goes out and plays. They do that. That's what they go out and practice. If you want to know, how do you know that the MOA is active? Under sectional at the very top, they have the name of every MOA, and it has times when it's active. And if it is active, you can still go through it. It also has a frequency that you can call for which your approach is in charge of it. Talk to them, and they'll tell you when any military airplanes are flying near you, around you, or they can give you vectors around, military where airplanes, military guys, practicing. Good habit to talk to ATC while you're going through it. You don't have to, okay? But it's not required to have a clearance. Next to it is what we call a restricted area. And it has an R dash number. Restricted means restricted. You cannot go in that airspace unless, just like a class Bravo, ATC says it's okay.
And they're blue. It's the blue
And they're
one.
blue, not magenta. Okay. Again, that's what the military practices. They do their thing there, and probably have some extra stuff that they don't want the public to see when, at any time they want to. But for whatever reason, R means restricted. Unless you have a clearance, you cannot go through. Now, also, they have time zones when they are active. Same thing at the top of the sectional chart. It's in blue. It has it will have the number of the restricted area. it will tell you, oh, between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. it's active, need a clearance. If it's not active, you're allowed to go through without talking to anyone, and ATC will allow you to go through when it's not active. And it has the altitudes of the where the size of the just like the MOA, the size of the restricted area. Just like Class Bravo, it gives you altitude between 10,000 feet and 20,000 feet, or whatever it is. Let's see. TFRs. Okay. Temporary flight restrictions. There are several types of TFRs, but any of them, when they're active, and if you have ForeFlight, if it will turn magenta, it will tell you it's an active TFR. Okay. For example, Beale has one, but it may not show it right now. Beale has a permanent TFR around it. Beale Air Force Base, which is in California. Some military bases will have TFRs above them. Okay. And for example, Disneyland, everybody's heard of Disneyland. It has a TFR around it, but the TFRs also has, it's either active or not active. ForeFlight will turn it red or magenta when it's active, and it will make it like a magenta circle, which is not filled in, okay, like the Class C surface area, and that means there is a TFR there, but it's not active. The nice thing about ForeFlight is when the TFR is active, you just tap on it, it tells you the hours, okay, the size, and tells you who's in charge. So if you ever want to go through a TFR that's active, if ATC allows you to, it's not a problem, because they know they'll by now, when they're talking to you, they know who you are, and you have to do what they tell you to do. So which means if they want you to fly a certain heading, a certain altitude, you're required to do it.
Did you say what TFR stands for? Maybe I missed it.
Temporary flight restriction.
Okay. All right, just making sure.
Okay. For example, when the president goes to visiting someplace, a town, they will have a TFR around the president at all times. And you can only go through if you get permission, and it moves with the president. So sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out where it is, because if he's here for 1 hour and he moves another airport for another hour, it just kind of follows him wherever he's at. Yeah. But again, with ForeFlight, the nice thing is you tap on it and it will tell you. The best thing to do when you have a TFR around you, call ATC, and they will ask him to either keep you away from the TFR or give you permission to go through it. And with that, you know, it kind of, you're a safe haven where, okay, I'm talking to ATC, they'll keep me out of trouble kind of video. All right. Any more questions? Any questions? Somebody's got to have a question. No
Or
question.
comment. Question,
No comments.
comment.
With Class Bravo, oh, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Can we mention more or talk more on the Mode C veil that surrounds that?
Okay. Oh, thank you for reminding me. All right. The Mode C veil around the Class Bravo is a solid magenta line. Okay. What that means is, if you are inside, there we go, right there, you are not in Class Bravo airspace, okay? But requirements to be underneath it or in that particular inside the magenta, you got to have a Mode C altitude, and you have to have ADS-B. Not all of us are familiar with ADS-B yet, or not every airplane has ADS-B. The majority of do. But nowadays, to be inside that magenta, you got to have Mode C, and you got to have an ADS-B. Any more questions? Thank you. Jamie, can you think of something? You know, there are more symbols on the chart. If you guys want me to go over some symbols that might mean something that might be important, okay? But that's the basics for how can I say, for airspace. Okay, we just covered the majority of them, and as long as you know those numbers, okay, it should be very easy for you to be able to pass a check right. Okay. There are other things about on a sectional chart. For example, a lot of people don't understand how they can call. Let's say I've got a nice long cross country. I'm going from Sacramento to Texas. My ride is 300 miles. I'm in a 172 to 100, doing 100 knots. It's going to take me a while to get there, obviously, with a couple of fuel stops. But for example, let's say I want to open a flight plan when I'm in flight, or let's say I want to get a weather briefing in flight over any particular area that's over my route. Okay, well, we may have, nowadays we have all the tricks we can have on board. The ADS-B in will give us weather where we are, which it has a little bit, some restrictions, okay, which I can talk about that later. But the idea is I can call flight service when I'm in flight to, how can I say, to talk to them and to ask them questions about weather. All right, so how do I get their number? Well, there are two ways to find a number, okay? Sometimes you'll find a box, a blue box that has a number on there. It will say RCO, remote control outlet, okay? And basically that's a number, and it will have the name of a, how can I say, of the flight service in charge. Stop right there, Jamie, go north a little bit.
Here, right here where I'm pointing.
Okay, that's one of them. Okay, it's, let's see.
Needles.
It says Needles RCO. Okay, I'm sorry, it's remote communication outlet, not control, communication outlet. Notice there's a couple of numbers on top. There's 122.2 and there's a 255.4. Well, the 255.4 is for UHF, doesn't apply to you guys. But the 122.2 is flight service. And if you look at the box below it, it says Riverside. That means that Riverside is the name of the flight service. I can dial 122.2 and ask them any questions about any weather for any briefing anywhere in the US that I want to. And if I want to open up a VFR flight plan, I can do it to that particular number right there. So that's how you can open up a flight plan or close a flight plan or get a weather updates, NOTAMs. It's just like calling them on the phone, but you're in flight. Since we know cell phones don't work that well, I can get a briefing before I take off, but an hour later, things are going to change. So with that, I can, with that particular number, I can call flight service. Now, if you look above and to the right of Needles, we have Kingman's, okay? Not everywhere in the US there's an RCO, remote communication outlet, okay? But if you notice, there's a VOR there. And there's a box that tells you the name of the VOR. Okay, it has a VOR frequency and it's got the Morse code, but right below it is a name, Prescott. That's Prescott Flight Service. Well, notice in that box, there's a number, 122.1R. Okay, very important. With that, again, I can dial that I can dial 122.1R on my VHF radio. But R means receive only, which means that ATC that ATC flight service can only receive on that frequency. They can't talk to you on that frequency. Well, it doesn't do me any good if I can talk to flight service, right? Well, they have a way of doing it. If you see the VOR frequency, which is 108.9, if you have a VOR on board the airplane,
0.8.
Make it a little bigger. That's 1.8. 108.8. You would dial 10.8, and some of you may know how to ident a VOR by turning the volume up, turn the speaker on, and you hear the Morse code, IGM, or the 2 dashes and dots, whatever that is. Okay, Morse code. That's how you identify the VOR. So what you do is you call flight service and say, hey, this is Cessna 1234. Give me kind of a position where you are, and you say, I'm transmitting on 122.1, I'm listening on 108.8. Prescott say, ooh, 108.8. Flight service has the capability of transmitting on the VOR frequencies. So therefore now you have two numbers up, or volumes for 2 separate radios up. You have the VHF frequency you're talking to them on, and you're receiving on the VOR, so you can still talk to them and ask them any questions that you want about anything, no weather related, or NOTAMs or whatever. So you have two different ways of contacting flight service, especially if you don't have the fancy XM download weather or ADSB in, which also gives you weather, okay, and your airplane. Now, I said ADSB. I said it has a little disadvantage. Great tool to have. It gives you weather, you know, if you can hook up to it, via Bluetooth, okay, for any airport that you want, okay. But sometimes it's not sometimes, it's delayed because it's all ground-based antennas. And which means that it sends out it sends out the signals, you get it, and the information you may get might be 15, 20 minutes old. As we know, weather changes very quickly. So the idea is when you get, you can use ADSB as a reference. If it's 5 minutes old, well, that's pretty accurate. I know what that is. But if it's 15, 20, 30 minutes old, okay, I have an idea what it's like. Things may have changed. It's nice to have it as a reference, but not as something you rely on if, you know, all the time. Obviously, like I said, if it's 5 minutes old, yeah, okay, that's pretty much what it is. But anything more than that, 10, 15, things may have changed. And we all know in flying, weather can change just at the blink of an eye. But still a good tool to have. Let's see.
We did have a question when you get to it, and anybody that has a question, you can just put
Jump
it on
in and ask.
or put it on the chat here like Jean did. Jean C is asking when you're ready, when you're
Go
done with
ahead.
the section is, and this is a good question because this is a hard one. Can you explain the Bay tour for those of you who can fly around like the San Francisco Bay that are actually in that area? He's asking, I hear it is something you can ask ATC as a way to fly around the San Francisco Bay. So
Okay.
if you can
Well,
get
all
to
right, so if you can pull up San Francisco, it may swing
Okay.
by San Francisco.
let me
The
go.
majority of class Bravo airspace have what they call VFL routes, okay? And you can see it on the sectional. It's nice, it's a long, and
I think it's these guys right.
okay, right here. You can, she's pointing to it. You can see that route right there is red. It's like a double-sided arrow and it's red, okay? Those routes are used by ATC to guide VFR traffic through San Francisco. It's an in-class Bravo. LA has the same thing. New York has the same thing. It makes it easy for them to put you on that route and without paying much attention to you because they know that you're following that route. They know your altitude. You have a squawk. They say, hey, you're clear to the Bravo airspace, you got a Bayshore route. You're done. You follow that route all the way to San Francisco until you exit the class Bravo airspace, and they don't have to talk to you anymore. Okay. If you weren't following a route, then they have to keep track of you to keep you away from IFR traffic or other traffic. By following the specific routes, now they know where you are. They don't have to keep, pay as much attention to you. Now, during non-congested areas, for example, San Francisco, if you go to during the time when it's not very busy, say, hey guys, I want to do a Bay tour. I want to do a tour over LA. I want to do over New York. If they're not busy, they'll give you clearance and just say, hey, go for it. They may ask, okay, what's your intention? Which are you going to go north on this side and south on that side? They may ask you questions of what your route's going to be. But like I said, if it's not busy, they'll give you a free for all and you do whatever you want to, as long as you ask. Did I answer the question, do you think?
Jean, was that good, Jean? Can you hear us? Oh, wait. Oh, no, is Jean? Oh, there he is. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Message back. Perfect. Thanks. All right. Okay, good. Yeah, no, that's I was gonna ask something about so like the coastal line VFR transition route ATC clearance required. That's what it says right here.
Right there.
And you can pull that. You can pull that chart up. There's usually charts on the routes. where do you find those?
On the routes, okay.
Yeah,
So, can you make this chart a little smaller
yes.
so you cover a bigger area? Oh, okay. If you notice, if you put your pointer to the right some, keep going right, go right, go right, keep go right, go right, go right, keep going and stop. You see that white line that goes straight up and down? Okay. Notice is right there, the stop right there. It says TAC, T-A-C. What that means, really, and almost all class Bravos have it, okay? It's called a terminal area chart. What that means is there is a blown up chart about 5 times bigger than this that strictly covers the San Francisco area in more detail, okay? And that way you can see what you're doing and everything is just more delineated. It's easier to see. And like I said, if the airport has one of those charts, you can just buy one of those or make it, if you have 4 flight, you don't need it, you make it big, that way you can see it. It will give you in more details all the information about that particular class Bravo airspace.
And there's, when you do a bay tour or anywhere you go under, as long as you're watching and you study your airspace, you can usually get under class Bravo. I've gone to the bay tour with just flight following and not done that VFR route. And just, I'm really, really, really careful, making sure, coming in from the east or whatnot, 5,000 to 10,000. I'm making sure I have my altimeter setting because that changes depending on where you've came from. So if you have an altimeter setting from somewhere far away and then you just don't get an updated altimeter setting and then you pop in at 4,500, but really you're up at 5,000, you could get busted for that. So you can sneak your way under, but just be extremely careful.
Exactly. The good thing about ADSB is something goes wrong, you have an emergency, you crash, they can find you very quickly. The bad thing is when you go to when you go somewhere where you're not supposed to be, they also know exactly where you are. So good and bad, but or you can track somebody that even if they try to hide their flight plan, if they're putting out ADSB, you can see them on 4-flight.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Another
track
thing-
your friends, boyfriends, or girlfriends.
Another thing to add to what Jamie said, you can stay below the airspace, but there is a frequency on the chart that says, monitor. So I'm always talking to ATC, for flight following and then just monitoring that bay tour because that area does get congested. So just make sure you're looking at that as well.
Exactly.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions? That was too easy, guys.
They're letting it soak in.
For the next time, I'm gonna how can I say, I'm looking for people, if you have a subject you want me to talk about, whether it's aerodynamics, something specific, FARs, limitations, feel free to email them to Jamie. We can put a little agenda together, answer any questions that you have, okay? Those are for anybody attending. This can count towards your ground towards any reading that you may need the ground for, okay? You can do a 4-flight, if you do 4-flight, you do a request. If you don't have a way of asking for a logbook endorsement, email Jamie your name and certificate number. I can type something out and email it to you guys, sign, that way it counts towards ground for your logbook.
Mm-hmm.
Since you are required to have a certain amount of ground school for when you go for a rating, and that will count.
Yeah, it's always good to log when you can.
Exactly.
And I just, like Richard said, anything you guys want us, there's so many good subjects that we could talk about. It's like insane. We're trying to cover everything and cover like a lot of it. And then maybe even recap, in a few weeks, going back to, always going back to different things, like even airspace. We're not going to stop it there. We'll go back, and I'd like to at some point get a little interaction with everybody, just to make sure you're fully understanding it, especially when we have a small class like this. We can, interact. It's going to, like I said, Alicia is going to be teaching as well. Richard's going to be teaching. We're gonna work together.
I forgot to add Jamie. She's gonna be teaching.
I'll be hosting. I will be
We're not
teaching.
doing all the work for you.
No, I will be teaching as well.
All
So we're
right,
all gonna
sounds
work.
good.
We're all gonna work together. Richard and I both fly a lot. So if there's a week that, we're not here, Alicia's our number one gal. She's our go-to. So if you don't see our faces, it's not because we don't love you. It's because we're stuck in an airplane. But the show must go on, and that's how we're going to handle it. And just to kind of recap on what this program is, so you could spread the word, spread the love for those of you who know only a little bit about what we do. Girls Love to Fly is a nonprofit organization. It's a 501c3. We give scholarships to women in aviation to get people going, because it's a really expensive thing, whether you're doing it for a hobby or a career. It's crazy, it's crazy expensive, and it's getting more expensive because gas prices are going up. So what we do is go on our website, girlslovetofly.com. You'll see what we do. Richard is kind enough to donate a check ride once a month. It's to be used locally in the Sacramento area. But guess what? An airline ticket from wherever you're at might be cheaper so don't hesitate to be like, oh, why I live way out here. Well, guess what? You may want to consider applying for his scholarship. And then we do have a Cessna 150 that you could potentially rent to do the check ride in, or we can work something out with that. So we do have an aircraft that you can do it in. This ground school was free tonight. And I wish we could do it free every week because we love what we do, but we have to pay our instructors. So it's going to be $20 a month to be a member. It's guys and girls, because the money does go back to the 501c3 to help more women in aviation. So the girls that do decide, the girls and guys that decide to sign up, for the ladies, we are going to have like special perks in regards to your membership. We're going to do like membership scholarships eventually, once we get enough money in. We're going to do giveaways, and we're going to make it really worth your while. And not to mention, we're going to be doing this ground school that's super awesome, every other week. So if you do want to sign up, let me know how, and then we'll basically send you the link, and it's a donor box, and you just set up for a reoccurring $20 a month. And this is what you get. You get us. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or want to add anything? Maybe not. Anybody at all?
I was just going to say that I'm excited for this all to start and continue with all these lessons and everything, and it's kind of nice to meet everybody once in a while and see faces.
There's a lot of cool people from a lot of different areas, and it's fun to hear people's stories. And once a month we're thinking about just doing just to get together too, because we're going to be in the club, a membership thing, get together, talk about experiences that have happened in an airplane, things that we could show you and be like, what, I'm sure we've all done wonderful stupid things as in our flying, whether it be from your PPL, blowing a tire to anything. And and so sharing those experiences and not being shy to tell each other, it will help in the next future aviator. And that's one thing that we do want to do as well, but not tonight, because that might take aerodynamics. That's a good one. That might take a long time, but aerodynamics, we are going to do a lot of aerodynamics. We just had a question on the chat about aerodynamics. It's like, that is one of my favorite ones. That was like the hardest one to get when I was doing my PPL.
It's really, once explained correctly, should I say, it's really easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of terminology to understand, but okay, if it's explained, believe me, you'd be surprised how easy it is.
Yep.
It's not that hard.
Richard will make it easy, and so will Alicia. Any other questions or comments or anything?
And if you do have a question that's like that pops into your head and we go to a check ride, email Jamie. She'll give it to me. I'll give you an answer. It doesn't, I don't care whether you're part of whether you are a member or not. If it's a check ride questions, feel free. I'll be more than happy to answer your question.
Yeah, we are here to help. We ultimately don't want to charge the $20 a month, but we just have to cover certain costs. But we always are here to help. You can email me, and I'll let Richard know. And he's been doing check rides for a long time. And he's a good examiner. He's very fair. but he also knows his stuff, you know, and he's one to have in your back pocket. So Alicia, you want to add anything?
I don't really have anything. That was great, you know, just to refresh on my own airspace.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a CFI, double I, MEI, it's like, it doesn't matter. You have to hit this stuff so many times. It's just so important. So
The
it
reason
was
why I
good
remember,
listening.
the reason why I remember so well is that I was asking the questions when I get the check right. So it
Yeah.
stays with me. If I don't use it, you lose it, right?
Exactly. So
And I think it was great.
to
And
know.
like I said, the people that are in here that are, you know, even maybe beginners, I know that was a lot, but just go ahead and go into Richard, where should they go? There's a lot of good books.
You
but-
have the Amazon Information Manual, Chapter 3 talks about airspace.
Okay, there you go. And
Okay?
everybody should,
And then you also have the FA part, part 91. I think it's the 113, 123, not 100 range. It talks about airspace, and that's strictly a memory kind of thing. Okay, but just remember, it's a plug and play. One number. No, you have 3 different types of numbers. They all fit somewhere. Okay, so but Amazon Information Manual, AIM, Chapter 3 talks about airspace and the FARs. That's the basic 2 places you can find. Or send me an email, ask me a question, and be more than happy to answer it.
okay. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Alicia, and thank you everybody that came. Spread the word about this so we can build it up and make it fun and, you know, have a good time.
Think of questions or topics. All right. Bye, guys.
All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.